Deku and Mob are two very well known anime protagonists, and it's fairly well known as a matchup. That said, this fight is not close at all in my opinion, which I hope to outline today. If you're going to enjoy this video, then make sure to like, subscribe, comment below your thoughts on this matchup. The calcs that I mentioned in this video will also be linked in the description below for anyone to see. Also, massive shout out to Chronicler who assisted with the My Hero Academia speed scaling, and let's get on with power scaling Izuku Midoriya first. Deku, as of late, has been given a lot more respect in the wider versus debate community, as he is really strong, being able to destroy multiple continents in one attack. My Hero has a lot of continental feats to speak of, such as Deku potentially scaling to the likes of the Todoroki family, who are capable of creating a storm covering all of Japan, requiring the power of 1.72 petatons of TNT in order to replicate it. Deku should also scale above his past self, who, along with Bakugo, was capable of splitting a storm which massively eclipsed an entire island. This calc is a bit finicky, with other versions of this calc putting it at large country level, but you can also get it up to 34.66 petatons of TNT, which is multi-continental. Lastly, Deku has a feat right at the end of the manga where he punches away clouds spanning over the entire world, requiring power equal to 42.37 petatons of TNT. Speed-wise, Deku should be in the light speed ranges at a bare minimum. This is very well known from the fact that the likes of Shigaraki are capable of reacting to and catching light-based attacks, and Deku is capable of directly fighting Shigaraki, but you can also scale Deku even higher than this when he's not even remotely close to his full power. This is because Aoyama's laser is outright stated to be a beam of light over and over again, and fodder characters like Hagakure and very early Mina Ashido are capable of reacting to it and dodging it. Deku should also scale to Overclock, who can increase his speed from 3 to 10 times. Seeing that absolutely weak characters can react to light speed attacks, you could get Deku to 10 times faster than light from this alone. But this is only the tip of the iceberg with My Hero Academia speed scaling, as there's even more wild shit in Vigilantes. Firstly, there's a little kid in middle school who has the ability to shoot light beams, with other characters being able to show reaction feats to it around 74% the speed of light. Comparing this difference between a middle schooler's reaction time and a policeman's reaction time, the regular policeman in My Hero would be able to react to things at 1.2 times the speed of light, which makes perfect sense, seeing as light quirks are fairly commonplace, so law enforcement should be capable of being able to handle it. This stat for policemen in the verse is important though, due to a character named Six, who's capable of blitzing a group of police officers so fast that time looks frozen by comparison with how fast he's moving relative to the police officers, on some Metro Man type shit. This feat can place Six at over 300 times faster than light, and if you want to stack the overclock speed multipliers on top of this, you can get to thousands of times the speed of light, potentially even higher if you consider the fact that when Rewind All For One releases millions of quirks within him, including the potentially thousands to hundreds of thousands of speed and power enhancing quirks while fighting Bakugo, Bakugo is still able to avoid it. As I said, you can get My Hero Academia to just ridiculous levels of speed, as I'll get to later, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things when it comes to this fight. Abilities wise, Deku has got a fair amount in his arsenal, although most of his abilities mostly boil down to different types of punching, kicks and air attacks, but there are some other notable ones to talk about. Firstly, Deku has Danger Sense, an ability which basically works kind of like a Spidey Sense, which alerts Deku to danger. He also has a Smoke Screen, which, true to its name, creates a thick smoke screen. Black Whip is a quirk that allows Deku to attack with dark, powerful tendrils. Float allows Deku to perfectly move throughout the air. Reflect Turn can also allow him to create after images, and he also has Gear Shift, which allows him to both increase his speed but also decrease the speed of the opponent and even immobilize them upon being hit, manipulating physics itself. He should also be comparable to All Might, who can interact with beings made of pure energy, and Fadjin allows Deku to build up kinetic energy to deal even more damage. Deku is also incredibly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, being able to predict his opponent's moves even when they are faster than him and without Danger Sense. He's also capable of keeping up with All For One, who has over 100 years worth of combat experience. He also has a fair amount of resistances to abilities too, such as resistance to mind control, and his abilities cannot be forcibly taken from him. Deku also displays resistance to fate itself. This is due to the fact that Night Eye saw that Deku would die in a future that is guaranteed to happen, and yet despite that, Deku is able to ignore it and win the fight against Overhaul. All Might and Bakugo are also outright stated to defy fate as well, with All Might being fated to die in that specific circumstance, and Deku should scale above them. There's also one topic that can be brought up into consideration when talking about Hack's abilities to My Hero Academia, and it's Deku being able to interact and block Shigaraki within his mental landscape. Some people interpret this as soul manipulation due to vestiges being soul-like. Equally, this could also just be argued to be strong mental will. Either way, we can talk about it more if it's even a factor further later on in the fight. Shigeo Kageyama has 3 distinct levels of power. His usual normal state, a state of being where his emotions hit a boiling point at 100%, and finally the question mark percent form, which I'll just refer to as unknown percent for the purposes of this video. Prior to his emotions exploding in 100% power, Mob's best feat is destroying a mountain-sized snot spirit. You can divide this feat into 4 since it was done between 4 people, but you still get it to large mountain level regardless. While you can argue this doesn't quite scale to base Mob since he was doing it with other people, he is by far the strongest of all 4 people, including himself in base form, meaning that he would be carrying most of the weight in the 4.58 gigaton calculation. Also, side note, I should probably clear this up whilst on the topic, in case any anime-only Mob Psycho viewers are wondering why base Mob is more powerful than Serizawa, considering the Serizawa is capable of overpowering base Mob in their fight. While Serizawa, at the point of their fight, would be around base Mob's level of power at the very least, Mob continues to grow in power as the series progresses, and ends up being able to literally hand-wave away an evil spirit, which sent Serizawa flying into a wall in the Reagan spin-off manga, meaning that, yeah, Mob is even stronger than Serizawa in base. Once Mob reaches 100%, he can scale up to multi-continental as well. This is due to a feat where he's capable of making such a loud noise that it can be heard across the entire solar system in a short amount of time, requiring over 34 octillion watts, which when converted to tons of TNT, would get you 827 petatons of TNT. Unknown percent Mob should be more powerful than 100%, but the issue is that unknown percent Mob seems to have a vary in terms of power, like he has no control over it. In one instance, he needs multiple hits to take down Taruki, who, even while amped, was lesser than base Mob in power. But on the other hand, you also have the likes of him being able to take attacks from Torichiro and Sho, despite the fact that Torichiro is able to overwhelm 100% Mob. You also have Keiji Mogami, who was also able to overwhelm 100% Mob, but then when Unknown percent Mob came out, it was able to completely destroy Mogami's realm. All of that said, Unknown percent Mob can be potentially stronger than his 100% self and can dish out more attacks. It's just that every single attack he does isn't going to be necessarily as powerful as it could be, particularly if his opponent is weaker than him. Speed-wise, and this is where Shigeo Kageyama massively drops off in terms of scaling. At his base state, he should upscale from Ryo Shimazaki, who is capable of dodging multiple point-blank bullets, calculating out to 6 times the speed of sound, or over 4,600 miles per hour. The highest that you can scale base Mob in terms of speed is if you can try and scale him to his own sneeze while he's asleep. Whilst asleep, Mob was able to sneeze a snot bubble out of orbit in a short amount of time. Due to the lack of time frame though, it's kind of hard to scale, but it should range from anywhere between Mach 68.7 to a high end of almost Mach 3000. The highest speed feat for 100% Mob would place him as sub-relativistic, due to being able to react to lightning in a short amount of time, calculating out to 0.04 the speed of light. There are a couple of light speed arguments for Mob, and while they would apply to base Mob, meaning that his 100% state is much faster, these arguments are really bad in my opinion. The first argument is that Sho Shizuki is capable of manipulating light. However, this is only ever used to make him invisible and isn't exactly a speed feat. The only other faster than light feat that is even more remotely concrete it comes from Taruki, who outright stated he flew at the speed of light to catch up with Mob. This could literally just be Taruki using hyperbole in order to describe how fast he went, which is backed up by the fact that this line wasn't even in the original manga. If there were other light speed feats in Mob Psycho, I feel like this could be a good piece of backup evidence, but seeing that this is the only possible light speed argument, and it's anime only, Occam's razor would simply say that Taruki is just being hyperbolic. When it comes to Mob's set of abilities, they all come from his ESP psychic abilities. This has typical psychic abilities like telekinesis, flight, energy projection, and the ability to paralyze people in place. Mob can also create psychic shields and can sense, interact, and negate the regeneration of spirits. He can also mimic other people's abilities, absorb energy from his surroundings and even people in order to make himself stronger. He can manipulate plants and also leave his body as an astral spirit in order to possess someone, although his body is vulnerable during this time. Mob also naturally resists mind control and soul manipulation, seeing that he's able to come back from his astral self just being absolutely shredded. Once Mob reaches 100%, his powers increase far higher, being able to absorb and reflect attacks with far higher efficiency. He's also capable of healing from attacks which are powerful enough to make him bleed. At unknown percent, the energy absorption ability Mob has works passively, meaning that the more that you are around him, the weaker you will become. And he can also manipulate gravity, so with it all laid out, how does Mob match up against Deku? If you're paying full attention throughout this video, it should be clear that in terms of raw power, Deku would far outclass Mob before Mob reaches 100%, and when Mob does reach 100%, he would actually be 20 times stronger than Deku. There's also the fact that even if you grant Deku spiritual interaction, Mob can easily recover from spiritual damage and resist mental and soul attacks, so that wouldn't work on him. However, that's about where all the positives for Mob end, as Deku is just absurdly faster than him. To put it into perspective, even if you take Deku at a baseline light speed and Mob at sub-relativistic at 100%, Deku would still be 25 times faster. And if you use the speed multiplier as I mentioned previously, you can get Deku from 250 to 8,700 times faster. Even if you use the very flimsy light speed Mob scaling argument, Deku would still be from 10 to 350 times faster. This doesn't even bring into consideration Deku's danger sense, giving him a form of precognition, and the fact he can predict attacks from faster opponents without it, meaning that Mob would basically never land a hit on him. There's then also Gear Shift, which would make Mob even slower, or even outright immobilizing him, making him just even harder to hit Deku. Well, yes, Mob could probably use his psychic powers even while immobilized. It just further hammers home the point that Deku is just outclassing him in terms of movement, no matter how you look at it. Deku is also far more skilled in hand-to-hand combat, so while Mob could be skilled above Deku, he would just get speed blitzed and chipped away at until he just eventually dies down, as the difference between Mob's power and Deku's power is a lot lower than the difference between Mob's speed and Deku's speed. There's an even bigger nail in Mob's coffin, however, as he wouldn't even start the fight at 100% state of being, meaning that Deku would not only be hundreds to hundreds of thousands of times faster than the highest possible speed feat for base Mob, but also base Mob's attack potency and defense is at best over 9 million times weaker than Deku's punching power. Basically, if we were to take this into a realistic look into this fight, Deku would just blitz and one-shot Mob before he even has the chance to reach his own level of power to rival Deku. But what about astral projection and the energy absorption that Mob has? These arguments are a little weird because there are some abilities that Deku has which vaguely resembles resistance to these things, although I really wouldn't argue that that would be the case either way, just because of how flimsy the likes of the vestige argument are for spirituality. Not to mention that, again, Deku would just speed blitz, so these don't really come into account. If Mob does use astral projection as well, his body is completely defenseless and can't attack, so that's just another nail in his coffin, as Deku would just speed blitz him before the astral projection could possess his body, and he would just kill Mob. Unknown percent Mob could pose a physical threat to Deku, seeing that his durability is super high, but seeing as Mob's attacks don't always have to necessarily be stronger than Deku's, and the fact that Mob is unconscious in this state, Deku would, again, outspeed, outskill, outwit, and just chip away at Mob until he's done. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, comment below your thoughts on this matchup, and I'll see you all next time.